Sound check. Hey everyone, it's good to see you. Hey, for this live broadcast, grab your man, get him on over here, and let's go over some really, really good things when it comes to men, testosterone, and their lifestyle. So grab your man, and that way, ladies, you don't have to yell at him. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. Happy Monday, guys. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Interesting topic tonight. Man up. How to increase your testosterone without all of the gimmicks. This is actually, I'm going to say it's a really, really good talk. And this is actually the first time I've ever done this online. I have done this for hundreds of men, in person. But I thought, you know what, we got a pretty big audience here, and maybe we should deliver this message to a lot of the men out there. So, and I understand that 80% of the people who follow me, they're women. I understand my demographics. However, grab your man, ladies, and let's have a discussion as far as why men's testosterone is in such disrepair and decline. So, the title of tonight is Man Up, How to Increase Your Testosterone Without the Gimmicks. Yes, there are a lot of gimmicks that are out there, and I'm not going to talk to you anything about herbs or really supplements or anything like that. And I'm going to come from a perspective of lifestyle. So, this is why this is so important. This is why I say, men, you can absolutely lifestyle yourself into a very bad situation. I'm going to talk about the biggest things with lifestyle when it comes to that. So, how to increase your testosterone without the gimmicks, without the testosterone boosting supplements, without any of that, because yes, you can actually do that with just by completely changing your lifestyle. Okay. So, if you're watching right now, we're broadcasting live on YouTube. We're on Facebook, both at the Wellness Way Yorkville and also at Dr. Nathan Thompson, and also at YouTube at Dr. Nathan Thompson, and also on the wonderful Rumble platform, which is actually one of my favorites. However, if you say hello or anything, I won't be able to see it if you're watching from Rumble. But go ahead, and if you are watching, please, by all means, please say hello. Let me also know where you're watching from. And if you're watching this on replay, just go ahead and type in replay so I know that you are, in fact, getting this and you're going back and watching it. Okay. So, very, very important because what I'm going to go over with you is going to open your eyes, especially when you talk about testosterone and things like that. Now, before I talk about that, I want to talk about something that's very interesting. This is a recent peer-reviewed paper that has come out over the last 2 weeks from Ophthalmic Epidemiology 2025. And you'll notice it's from July 14th, so just about 2 weeks ago. The title of it is Evaluation of the Effects of mRNA, CoV, et cetera, 19 jibby jabbies on corneal endothelium. Okay. So this is a paper that they did, and basically they looked at, people who had gotten the the COVID-19 vaccination then they got the follow-up, with that. And one of the things that they came with, they looked at pretty decent amount of people. And here's what their conclusion was: changes in corneal endothelium occur in the short term after 2 doses of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 mRNA vaccine. Hence, the endothelium should be closely monitored in those with a low endothelial count or those who have had a corneal graft. So basically what they're seeing is they're seeing that, yes, the mRNA vaccine does in fact cause changes to your eyes. And I have looked at that and see how it changes, a woman's menstrual cycle. And now they're saying, men and women, they're saying that it actually causes changes in the eyes, which can affect vision and things like that. So is this a anti-vaccine or an anti-vax post? No. And in fact, if you're new to watching or following our page, you actually won't be able to find this anywhere unless you go to the Rumble platform and watch the live video that I did when I was testing people's immune system pre and post. And I thought, oh my goodness, guys, here's what's happening. Here's how the immune system is responding. And I made a prediction. Here's what is going to happen. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to get infected with a quote unquote second wave. We did. And then I also made the prediction that there's going to be a lot of people suffering with long COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And they are. So, and now this is just more research that's actually proven the point with the detriment to this it's not even a vaccine. It is a therapeutic. Okay. Now, this is an anti-vaccine or anything like that, but you know what it is? It's called informed consent. So I tell people, hey, if you want to do it, fine. But you should know all of the risk, and you should know very well all of the side effects that can take place with you getting this specific therapeutic. And you should have informed consent in regards to that. But the reality is nobody was informed. In fact, everybody was misinformed, including our resident in chief at the time. I won't even say his name because he's an absolute disgrace to America. But he said, hey, if you get it, you won't get COVID, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we knew that wasn't true as well. And so the biggest thing that I tell people is you deserve informed consent. You deserve informed consent. But right now we're finding that hasn't happened. And so a lot of people have been forced to get a therapeutic that they might not didn't want, or their job was on the line. And and they made poor decisions mainly because they didn't have all the information in front of them. So informed consent is absolutely huge. So I'm 100% for informed consent. But the problem is that when it comes to a lot of these things, there is no informed consent. People don't know the risks. They don't know the different things that can happen or take place. And so they just blindly follow what everyone else is doing. Now, let's get into the discussion about men's testosterone. And if you look at this picture here, how do I know that men's testosterone is in decline? Well, if I didn't know any stats or research, here's how I would know. Because if you look at men, the number of men that admit that they have low testosterone is basically zero. But you would be amazed at the number of times a woman in a consult comes to me and she says, hey, I got a question about my husband. He's got this, this, and this. What do you think that it is? And so most of the time when it comes to a man and his testosterone, it's actually his significant other that's talking about it. And they're describing to me all the different types of symptoms that take place when a man does in fact have low testosterone. So here's the thing, guys. I want you to be very honest with yourself. I want you to be very honest. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to make fun of you. I'm not here to do any of that. But what I am here to do is to give you a hope and to give you a different direction. So let's just be really, really honest when it comes to this. Now, I know that you guys have probably heard this before, is that male testosterone declines with age. And in fact, if you look at, men's average testosterone levels, you can see at 20 years, it's supposed to be, at 950 or something like that. And then you just see that it starts to taper off as someone gets older. So we have been taught, we have been conditioned that men's testosterone is supposed to decline with age. Is that common? Yes. Is it normal? Absolutely not. It's not normal. And so there's a difference between common and there's a difference between normal. Just because it happens to a lot of men doesn't necessarily mean that it's supposed to happen. And in fact, I would actually say this. If you look at men, we are biologically programmed to reproduce until we die. But here's the problem with this. You see men's testosterone just start to fall off the shelf. And the biggest reason why has to be with lifestyle. You go to other countries, like Okinawa, Japan, you'll see that their testosterone stays high all the way through, well into their 70s, into their 80s. And in fact, men's, you could just see that it just falls off the cliff when they get to be 30 years of age. And you don't have to look very far. You see all of these, testosterone clinics that are popping up. And I will actually tell you this, they don't say anything about lifestyle whatsoever. The reason why is because if they did, they wouldn't be able to make any money. They make their money on giving people exogenous testosterone. So lifestyle is one of the biggest things that caused this to start to fall off the cliff as people start to get older. And so that's why everyone says, well, you get older, your testosterone is supposed to go down. But I'm going to show you why that's not necessarily true. These are labs of a man, 73 years of age, okay? 73 years of age. And he was having some issues with some blood sugar issues, no doubt about it. So we looked at blood sugars, average blood sugars, A1C, insulin levels, and things like that. And you can see when he first started, his testosterone was at 333. And then about 4 months later, you can see this testosterone jumped up to 637. So basically, it almost doubled in the span of about 4 months, I should say. So here's the thing. So in the span of 4 months, this gentleman got older, but yet his testosterone actually went up. And this was purely based on lifestyle and some of the things that I was telling him to do. So even though he got older, yet his testosterone got better, that goes against everything that society, that doctors or anything believe, when it comes to that. So here's the biggest thing I want you guys to understand when it comes to hormones. And ladies, this is also for you too, is that hormones are really messengers. And hormones don't make you sick, okay? Hormones don't make you sick. You're sick and the hormones respond. I have so many women who come to me because they're having fertility issues. They're having issues when it comes to their menstrual cycle. And they think, I need you to balance my hormones. And in reality, what I'm saying is no, I just need to, I need you to do the right thing so that you don't stay sick. This is also true for men too, because what has to happen before the hormones start to go in decline is that you have to become sick and then the hormones start to respond because of that. And if you look at, and I don't care, it doesn't matter if you believe that we climbed out of like a pool of amino acids that got struck by lightning and somehow miraculously evolved, or if you think, no, we have a creator, and we are intelligently designed. And really, if you think about it, the sicker you get, the less likely you are able to reproduce. And that makes a lot of sense, because why would you want to be sick and be reproducing? And so this is why hormones are really kind of a direct reflection of your health. So hormones don't make you sick. You're sick, and then the hormones respond. And what drives down those hormones to just ungodly low levels? And it really is your lifestyle. And this is why you really need to be getting your lifestyle back under control. And this has a lot to do with inflammation I'm going to talk about here in just a second. So guys, if you are from the Chicagoland area, if you're a woman or if you're a man, our next one is going to be Tuesday, August 12th at 6 o'clock p.m. This is an in-person event. This is why, guys, inflammation is so, so important. It is so important. This is absolutely huge, because if you stay chronically inflamed, you don't know what it is, where it's coming from. You're going to see problems with weight loss resistance. You're going to see a problem with poor immune system function. All of that's going to affect your fertility hormones, your thyroid hormones, chronic joint pain, blood sugars, autoimmunity, which really is not the body attacking itself, it's trying to clean up damaged tissue, and yes, even balance to your hormones. So if you are from the Chicagoland area, you want to work with us directly, and you may not be in the best of shape, doesn't matter if you're a man or you're a woman, get registered for this event coming up in 2 weeks from tomorrow. All you have to do is, if you go to our Linktree profile, you'll see it on all our socials. Click on that. And the first thing to show up will be the inflammation event. So if you click on that link right there, whether you're on your phone or whether you're from a desktop, click on that. That will take you to Eventbrite. It'll take you 60 seconds to register for that free event. And when you do that, my staff closer to the event will reach out just to confirm your attendance at that event. So really, really important, especially men, if you have low testosterone. Holy cow, you really do need to be at this event. So let's go over some of the symptoms of having low testosterone. And people ask me, well, what are some of the symptoms of low testosterone? I'm like, there's a lot of symptoms that can go on, but really the only way to know exactly where your testosterone levels are at is that you actually are measuring it. And I went into my lab today because we had a blood draw, and I went and I'm measuring all of those things in addition to some other things like my insulin levels. I'll go over why here in just a second. Yes, looking at my blood sugars, looking at a lot of different things, but yes, I am measuring my testosterone and some of the metabolites of them. And I'm measuring that because I really want to know how I'm doing with metabolizing certain hormones, and also how am I doing in regards to lifestyle, things like that. This is why I'll go into my own lab, get my own blood drawn twice a year just to see how I'm doing. And guys, when you do that, there's no surprises. So you're not shocked that something jumps up at you have no idea why, because you're always monitoring those things and seeing what you can do in order to improve that. But despite that, even despite not measuring, if you didn't measure it, what are some of the symptoms of having low testosterone? Well, here's the number one thing: low sex drive. So one of the most important things is low sex drive. Yes, you can have erectile dysfunction if it's low enough and things like that. That's why you see the picture. But yes, you can have low sex drive. And a lot of people don't know this, but if your testosterone is healthy and it's within a good range, a man should wake up every morning with an erection. So now I just made this talk for like PG-13 or maybe, R-rated, just because of what I'm talking about, but they learn this in school. But this is why, a man should wake up every morning with a morning erection. And one of the reasons why is in the morning, testosterone should be at its highest amount, and it should taper off as you go through your day. So this is why low sex drive is one of the warning signs that, hey, testosterone right now is going to be in decline. Now, number two is decreased body hair. And I see this quite a bit in a lot of older men, especially when they start losing hair off of their legs or off of their ankles. I know what they say. They're like, yeah, it's because I wear socks. And I'm like, I wear socks. I still have hair on my legs. But the thing is that if you are losing body hair and you're losing it from your ankles, whatnot. And yes, it can be other things. It can be, peripheral artery disease and things like that. However, if you have peripheral artery disease, your testosterone probably is pretty low. But there are certain hormone markers known as DHEA that can signify if that actually goes pretty low, and that can be a sign of different stressors that are going on. But you can start losing body hair, whether it's on your chest, whether it's on your face, whether it's on your arms, or whether it's on your legs. Decreased body hair can be a warning sign that testosterone is going to be low. How about this one? Low energy and poor sleep. So do you have low energy? Do you have poor sleep? All those could be signs that testosterone is low. Decreased muscle mass and increased body fat. Okay. So I love it when men say, oh, yeah, I'm only 10 pounds heavier than I was when I was in college. And I'm like, that's not 10 pounds of fat. You've lost a lot of muscle. So it's probably 25 or 30 pounds of fat. Decreased muscle mass, increased body fat is another warning sign. And also another warning sign too is man boobs. It's man boobs. So here's one of the things is that a lot of people don't realize is that ladies, you have estrogen receptors, and I use the word estrogen as a family of estrogens, but you have receptors for estrogen, in your boobs, and men do as well, which means if you start getting an increased conversion of testosterone into estradiol, that will actually signal the boobs to start to hang on to fat. And that's why men can start to develop man boobs. Okay. So that's another warning sign that your testosterone is in fact actually low. How about this one? A swollen prostate, otherwise can be known as benign prostatic hypertrophy, or BPH. And it's not necessarily low testosterone. It's that it's converting into things that are growing the prostate, which can be DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which is a lot more potent androgen. But they're the same things that can cause low testosterone, or the same things with lifestyle that can cause an increase in conversion of that can quickly grow the prostate and cause you to have some issues with that. So a swollen prostate. But here's one of the behavioral things that that a man's testosterone is really starting to go down is that they tend to dawdle. And what I mean by dawdle is this picture right here. Just look at the picture. They just can't make decisions. Now, here's one of the interesting thing about high testosterone men is that they tend to be more successful in life. And one of the reasons why is they tend to be able to make decisions, either if it's wrong, but they tend to make quick decisions and go in a direction confidently and not just suffer from paralysis by analysis. And I see a lot of men I know without even measuring, I'm like, man, they're low in testosterone because they just tend to dawdle and they just marinate on their inability to be able to make a decision. So all of those are warning signs that, hey, testosterone is low. And if it is, and you're suffering some of those warning signs, or ladies, your man is starting to, you're starting to see some of those symptoms. It's time to get them into the lab and start to get them to start to change some things around. So what are some of the roadblocks to having healthy testosterone levels? Well, here's one of the things. Number one, inflammation. Number two, sugar and insulin. And number three is lifestyle. I'm going to go over all three. So when you listen to this, you're like, these are some things that I probably should be doing. And pay attention to the very end, because I'm going to show you exactly what I'm going to be doing and some things that I've had hundreds of men actually do with very, very successful results. Okay. So inflammation, sugar and lifestyle, or sugar and insulin, inflammation, and lifestyle. Roadblock number one is inflammation. Okay. So we look at inflammation, and at the inflammation talk, I talk about physical, chemical, and mental stressors. The reason why I got to talk a little bit more about mental stressors is because mental stress will absolutely slam a woman's hormones a lot quicker than it will a man's. But if you look at a man, if a man has a lot of physical stressors, let's say on the spine and on the nerve system, that will actually affect the brain. And in fact, if you look at where a man's testosterone is first stimulated, it's actually stimulated within the brain. And that's why I tell people you can't have a stressed out brain. If you got a stressed out brain, all those stimulatory hormones are actually within the brain. So if you have a lot of chronic pain conditions that are going on, yes, it absolutely can affect your testosterone. And then also if you have a lot of chemical inflammation that's going on, i.e. in the gastrointestinal system, within the liver and things like that, well, then that will affect things like conversion of certain hormones and things like that. So physical and chemical is absolutely huge. It's not just, I'm just going to change my diet and that's all that's going to happen. You have to start addressing physical and chemical stressors. Now, I'm going to give you a perfect example here because this is a recent test that I did on an individual. Awesome guy. He came in, he had really bad digestive issues, has psoriasis, psoriatic patches, all over his ankles, abdomen, on the knees. And his main complaint was, I have extremely, extremely low energy. Oh my goodness, I just don't have the energy that I used to. Now, if you look at this, this is just part of the male panel that we ran on him. But if you look at this, yeah, there's some anemia markers that are going on. But also if you look at what's known as high sensitivity C-reactive protein, and you can see that that is sky high. So at 12 is extremely high because you do not want to see that really elevate above 1. And it can go pretty high when you have infection or if you're sick and things like that. So we're going to remeasure this again. But just talking to him leads me to believe that this had been sitting really high for a long period of time. This is just absolutely horrible. I always tell men, hey, men, if you're super, super inflamed, then plan on your testosterone starting to go low, because when we measured his testosterone, it was at 195, which is extremely low. And in fact, it's not all that much higher than, a woman's testosterone within a normal range. So his testosterone was just absolutely getting plummeted. And in fact, people ask me, well, does that mean he's supposed to go on hormone replacement therapy? And I said, well, does he have 2 testicles? Yes. I'm like, well, he's got the factory. Then one of the things you need to do is clean up the lifestyle in order to get the proper responses for testosterone production, because it's made in the testicles. So his testosterone is really, really low, looking at this. But not only did he have a lot of digestive issues, he had really poor sleep, poor energy. His joints were very, very swollen. And in fact, one of the things we did is we did things, hey, let's see if we can remove some inflammatory triggers. So we did a stool test on him, and we tested his IgG and IgE reaction to foods. One of the interesting things is if you look at this, look at his response to baker's yeast and brewer's yeast, and it was a very, very high inflammatory response that was going on. He looked at this and he looked at me and he said, oh man, he's like, This makes a lot of sense because I have 12 beers every Friday, 12. And the yeast that's coming from the beer is absolutely just slamming me and it's making me super inflamed. So as soon as he saw this, he got stopped drinking. He's like, "Oh my goodness, my hands feel so much better. I'm sleeping better. My energy's starting to go up." And this is why I'll ask people and I'll say, "Hey, do you eat clean?" And 95% of people will say, "Yeah, I eat a pretty clean diet." But you don't know what clean is unless you're absolutely getting tested. And so you can see he might think he's eating clean, but he's still reacting to eggs and he's still reacting to the yeast that's going to be in breads. He's going to be responding to the yeast that's going to be in certain alcohols and things like that. And this is why at some point everybody thinks, "Oh, I must need to go on a carnivore diet." We know why a lot of people feel better when they go on a carnivore diet because they eat primarily animal products. And in fact, a lot of people don't have allergies to, meats, certain meats. I don't see very many allergies to, bacon. I don't see that many allergies to chicken, to beef, things like that. So if you made that a staple of your diet, of course, you're going to knock down all of those inflammatory responses. It's not going to happen. Of course, you're actually going to feel better. The problem is you go on a carnivore diet a long period of time, you are missing out on vital things that you need for your gastrointestinal system, things like fiber, fermented foods, things like that. And so that's why, sometimes that I've told people go on a carnivore diet, it's really is only for, maybe 4 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that in order to start eliciting a change. But at some point, you need to start adding some things in, or else you'll start to suffer the consequences of doing that. But this guy is doing awesome and he cleaned up his diet only because he knew what on earth he was supposed to start cleaning up. So then as a result of us getting inflamed, we start to have symptoms. And the doctors, rather than say, "Let's get to the reason why this is happening," they say, "Let's treat the symptoms because it's the symptoms that are concerning, not the underlying causes as far as why it's happening." So are there certain medications that can cause testosterone to sink even further? Yes. I would actually say this: statin drugs. Number two, potassium sparing diuretics. One of them is spironolactone. And this is a blood pressure medication that oftentimes they give to women with PCOS because it actually takes their androgens and it converts them into estrogens. Corticosteroids will absolutely do, especially for people who got chronic inflammation. And I've talked about this, I think, on last week's live about corticosteroids and testosterone, how it just wrecks testosterone. Antidepressants or SSRIs, and yes, antihistamines can do that as well. So if you look at this, go and look at the number of people and the number of men that are on these medications. Specifically, they're on them long term. And then look at women and you wonder why their hormones are just so, out of whack. And you look at the medications that they're taking that are actually influencing their hormones. Woman starts to have problems with their menstrual cycle. And it's not, let's measure them. Let's see what's going on with your lifestyle. Let's look at inflammatory levels. No, instead, what they say is just go on birth control. So all these things can cause, this is the effects of inflammation. Then you take things that actually can make it worse. And this is why for a lot of men, man, they just don't know how to climb themselves out of the hole. So inflammation is number one. Number two roadblock is sugar and insulin. Okay. Sugar and insulin. "Oh, well, Dr. Nate, I don't consume that much sugar." But the reality is you consume a lot of carbohydrates that turn to sugar inside of the body or blood glucose, elevate your blood glucose. And what are they? Refined breads, refined pasta, refined rice, and a lot of condiments. Here's the interesting thing of sugar and insulin, because these are processed carbohydrates that will spike your blood sugars very easily. And here's the problem with this is that if you look at like sugar, your body can really only handle about 4 grams or about a teaspoon of sugar at any one time. So anytime that you consume more than that, then one of the things that has to happen is pancreas has to secrete insulin. And insulin is actually what opens up the cells so that sugar can actually get into the cell. It also is responsible for fat storage. And so that insulin will start to shuttle in sugar into your cells. And the thing is that if you consume way too much processed carbohydrates, because just remember this, you're not getting too many carbohydrates from fruits and from vegetables. Okay, it's impossible. But yeah, you can overconsume a lot of breads, a lot of pasta, white rice, and also a lot of condiments and also sugary beverages. And so one of the things that happens is that your liver and your muscles can store about 500 grams of sugar at any one time. And so the problem is once you get above that threshold of storage within the sugar and within your muscles, then what happens is the body can't store these as sugars anymore. So the liver has to go in and start packaging them up as a fat, and that will show up in your blood as a triglyceride, because basically it means you have a fat with a sugar backbone and it's going into fat storage. This is why when you measure your triglycerides, you really should be in the double digits in regards to that, because anything more really means that you're in fat storage mode, because even carbohydrates can be stored as a fat. So one of the things that happens when you start doing that and you're consuming high amounts of sugar is that it's going to cause a problem with hormone conversion. So I want you to look at this. This right here that you see here, this is known as the sex hormone pathway. These are how all of these steroid hormones are actually produced. Number one, the backbone of it actually comes from cholesterol. And then, you look at the number one thing that doctors want to knock down is they want to knock down with cholesterol with high amounts of statins. And I've done a video on this in the past of just how people can just be wrecked being on statin drugs. And I talked about the side effects of it. People are like, oh my gosh, this is me. So, so number one is that all of these hormones are derived from cholesterol. Okay. But then in order for the hormones to be produced and for it to convert and testosterone to be able to get produced by the testicles, it has to go through different conversions taking place. And then it can go through another conversion of things like DHT and estradiol. So it can be converted through a process known as aromatase into estradiol. And the thing is there are certain things that you're doing with your lifestyle that will speed that conversion into estradiol. And what are they? High insulin diet, or a high sugar diet that's causing a high insulin response, alcohol, inflammation, and also obesity, or carrying a high amount of body fat. And in fact, these cells, which are fat cells, they actually they express an enzyme known as aromatase, which then converts testosterone into estradiol. So technically speaking, if you want to be more like a woman, get fatter. That's one of the things that can happen. So insulin, alcohol, inflammation, and obesity. Now, here's the thing, is that the liver is actually responsible for converting these hormones, which then can be removed via the liver to the gallbladder and then into the gastrointestinal system. But the problem is that when it comes to your lifestyle, alcohol, trans fats, high fructose corn syrup, all those things can cause issues with the liver. You start doing things that's damaging the liver, you start putting excessive amount of body fat, visceral fat on, that can cause some damage to the liver, which is going to affect your ability to be able to metabolize fats. And it's also going to affect how these hormones are metabolized. So this is why, guys, if you are constantly carrying too much sugar within your liver, this is why this can cause fat deposition, chronic liver inflammation, eventually leading to liver cirrhosis. The movement of scarring into the liver that can cause a decrease in liver function. That's why the number one cause of fatty liver disease is not due to alcohol, but it's actually due to the overconsumption of sugars, including things like high fructose corn syrup and things like that. So roadblock number 2, sugar and insulin. And I know someone's going to ask this question too. Well, Dr. Nate, what do you think about TRT, testosterone replacement therapy? And here's what I say about this. If my lifestyle is causing an increased conversion of testosterone into estradiol, if my lifestyle is doing it, would injecting it exogenously, would that speed up the process? And the answer is yes. Yes, it's going to. And this is why, guys, If your body is saying, oh my goodness, things aren't good, we're lowering down testosterone because you're sick, well, then you start to inject it exogenously, and all it's going to do is just speed up the process with how it's actually metabolizing testosterone in the first place, which is why you start have a really poor lifestyle, and then you look at men taking high levels of TRT, high levels of testosterone if they're in the bodybuilding, you know, sphere, working on, doing things like that. This is why they start to express more issues with estradiol, which is why you can grow breasts, you can have swelling of the liver, and you can have some other things too if you're getting your testosterone above physiological levels, which is why you can have things like acne, aggression, and things like that. But body has to do something with that testosterone, and it will, if your lifestyle is causing it to convert into estradiol, by injecting it, it's just going to speed up that process. And then you're going to start to run into some issues long term. Okay. Now, is this 100%? Am I 100% against it? And the answer is no. But most of the time, the reason why you have low testosterone is because you're just lifestyling yourself into it. But there is a lot of research out there that shows that a man's testosterone can absolutely tank after having a traumatic brain injury. So, so, and in fact, I've seen it a couple times where a man has a traumatic brain injury, like from a car accident, or I've actually seen special forces who come in here who have suffered a traumatic brain injury. We measure their testosterone levels, and I've seen many times sitting at like 100. And man, these men are just absolutely just dying. But a lot of what can cause is chronic stress and traumatic brain injuries. So that's why I'm not 100%, like I'm not clear cut and dry. It requires a little bit of nuance. So if a man's had a traumatic brain injury, yes, sometimes they can benefit from getting some exogenous testosterone. But here's the thing, guys, is that if you're going to attempt to do that, you really need to be maintaining normal physiological levels. You should not be trying to inject yourself, getting your levels up to 1200, 1400, 1500. You're just asking. That's just a recipe for disaster. So you should be focused on maintaining physiological levels and also keeping your lifestyle clean so that you're not aromatizing those estrogens into, or those testosterone into estrogens specifically. So just to review, high insulin due to a high sugar diet leads to insulin resistance, or the body's inability to respond to insulin anymore, which then means that sugar won't be able to get into the cells. Sugar is going to get stored as fat, and that increased fat that you start putting on is going to convert testosterone into estradiol. And I see it happen so many times as men's lifestyle just starts to tank, and it just continues to happen. And rather than just man up and start to do something about it, they want to run and they want to start taking exogenous testosterone, and then they start suffering the consequences of doing that. So roadblock number 3 is related to lifestyle, but it's also how you exercise. It's how you exercise. This is why for men should be doing constantly varied functional movement that's needed in everyday life, done at a high intensity. This is why, guys, this is so important. And no, you're not going to boost your testosterone by going out and running a 5K every day. And in fact, doing moderate intensity exercise is not stimulating testosterone. And in fact, if you look at, you're doing cardio, all you're doing is cardio. Well, think of this. If you're doing cardio, then what is preferred is for you to be as light as possible, which means you're going to lose some muscle mass with this. And it's just not it's not a good environment for you to be able to start increasing your testosterone. So this is why, if I had the choice, and you can actually do both, but if I had the choice, I say my choice would be to get in and start doing some heavy weightlifting. However, this is not just doing bis and tris, and doing some wrist curls or something like that. This should be things like squatting, deadlifting, pressing, which are called compound movements. And you should be doing them at a high intensity, meaning you should be requiring some effort and not just doing, 10 reps on a machine and not even getting tired, barely breaking a sweat. You should be doing it. It should look different. Your workouts should look different every session. You should be doing things that you need in everyday life, and you should do it at a high intensity. Guys, this is why, one of the reasons why I am such a fan of CrossFit. And in fact, if you're watching right now, one of the things that I would do is I would Google CrossFit where where the closest gym is from your house. I know that we have one here in Yorkville, CrossFit Exemplified, that I used to own. Absolutely awesome, wonderful gym that I go to too. And 4 times a week, I will do some level of weightlifting, as well, done at a very, very high intensity. But the whole idea of just going out and just, running in a straight path for long periods of time, it's just not going to move the needle when it comes to testosterone. So you need to start doing some weightlifting. Roadblock number 3 has to do with lifestyle. And this is also when you eat. Okay. So it's not only what you eat, but also when you eat can play a huge role with this. This is why, yes, I am a fan of fasting, but I don't think it's an end all be all to everything. And in fact, right now I'm about 26 hours into a fast. I'm going to go 72 hours. But the thing with fasting, why I like that so much, is because if you start fasting, right now, one of the things that is happening is my body is just blowing through all of my stored sugar within my liver and within my muscles. So right now, I'm using stored sugar as an energy source. And this is also why I'm kind of urinating like a racehorse right now, because that will also make you lose a lot of water. This is why if you look at someone who does a 72-hour fast, and you'll notice that they'll lose a lot of swelling in their face, they'll lose a lot of swelling, in different parts of the body, because as you start to metabolize sugar and you start to get rid of it, you'll take a lot of water out of those muscle cells too. So, but the whole intent is to get into the point where I'm exclusively start burning fat. And that's why doing a fast is very important. This is why I tell men, you should be fasting quarterly. You should be doing a 3-day fast every 3 months or so. And in fact, I remember I did a 3-day fast every week for 6 weeks. Every week for 6 weeks. And people are like, how on earth did you do that? I'm like, it really wasn't that hard. And I don't think that fasting for 72 hours is actually that hard. It will get harder tomorrow. It will get harder tomorrow night. But the thing is I'll live. That's one of the things, I'll be able to live. So fasting can play a huge role as well. And then also your lifestyle can do a lot when it comes to your sleep. Okay. This is why I think that one of the biggest challenges that men are facing when it comes to their lifestyle is just they're not sleeping enough. Now, here's the interesting thing. Can getting enough sleep increase your testosterone? The answer is yes. However, I want you to know that most of your testosterone production, I would say about 95% of it, is actually coming from your testicles. And so getting enough sleep is not going to move the needle tremendously when it comes to testosterone. And in fact, if this, they looked at this about sleep restriction and testosterone. After 1 week of sleeping 5 hours instead of 9 hours, overall testosterone levels fell by 10 to 15%. So this is why men, they need sleep. You need adequate sleep for repair, for recovery, and also because the decrease in testosterone, I think, probably had more to do with your adrenal glands than it did the testicles. So, but this is super important with sleep when it comes to a woman, especially after menopause, because most of your androgen production is coming from your adrenal glands, which is why you need to be refilling them, recharging them by getting adequate sleep. So just 1 week of sleeping 5 hours instead of 9 hours caused a drop in testosterone by 10 to 15%. So this is why I believe that getting adequate sleep is very, very important. And in fact, I have gotten, over the last about year and a half, I probably have averaged 8 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So if someone says, hey, let's go ahead and do this, I'm like, I can't. I got a date. And they're like, a date with who? I'm like, the bed. I'm going to bed. So I have made it a huge focus to try to recover as best as possible, just to make sure that I have enough in the tank that's going to affect my adrenal glands. Does this work in real life? The answer is yes, absolutely it does. Here's a wonderful individual, and we've done this with hundreds of men. However, I just remember this individual came to me, Keith. He came to me and he had so much chronic pain. And I said, Keith, what would you like to be able to do again? He said, Dr. Nate, I just want to be able to run a mile. And I looked at him and I said, watch what happens. Keith did an amazing job when it comes to his lifestyle. And so here's the thing. We tested him starting off, and at the time, I think he was early 50s or late 40s, and his testosterone was at 171. So it was just critically, critically low. And then about 4 months later, you can see just with lifestyle, went up to 417. He also was pre-diabetic at this picture. And then a couple of months later, you can see his hemoglobin A1C went down into not being pre-diabetic. So this is actually a very good blood sugar levels. He also had a very fatty liver, which is why he was hanging on to so much stored iron. And this can be very damaging too. In fact, if you have elevated ferritin levels, usually that can be an indication that you have a fatty liver, which is why you hang on to so much iron. So you can see that over the course of about 3 to 4 months, you can see that his ferritin levels went down quite a bit, which means he was just stripping fat off of his liver, but he had to lose it from everywhere. And this was 100% based on lifestyle. Because look at the post picture. Wow. So here's the first picture. Here's the post picture. So you can see this person changed his life. And I'm very proud that he changed his life. Very proud of that. I love when people do great things in order to change their life. But the biggest thing, the biggest obstacle is it's not what you can accomplish in 4 months. It's what you can hold on to for 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. So you can see the big change behind that. And you can see he lost about 60, 65 pounds between this picture right here and between the next picture. And he put in a lot of awesome work. And this is called clinical results. This is doing the right thing repeatedly over and over again in order to get clinical results. Now, speaking of testosterone, look at this little boy right here. This is my youngest. He's 2 years old. His name is Elias. This was on the 4th of July. People say, well, how did that happen? So for me, my wife, she conceived in her 40s, and I contributed to that too in my mid 40s. And so I'm 48 years of age now, and I have a 2-year-old. And I know that's the joke because, people call me grandpa and whatever. But what do you think how amazing this is? So for me to be able to have enough testosterone, enough sperm production to conceive, and my wife being healthy enough to have normal hormone function and not be perimenopausal or anything like that, because this wasn't this way several years ago. And in fact, people ask me all the time, they say, how did you get into the wellness way? And I say, I had to, because my wife was very sick. I didn't know how to take care of her. And so I had to become a wellness way doctor in order to learn this approach in order for her to get her health back. And she got her health back, and she got her health back so much. And I improved my testosterone so much that now we have a little 2-year-old that's running around who is now entering into the terrible twos. I'm going to see him in just a couple of minutes. But this little boy, he is just the light of my world, as are all my kids. I love them dearly. But this little boy never would have had a chance at life if my wife had stayed sick, or in the past, if I had stayed sick and I hadn't manned up and started to take some responsibility for my own health and for my own life. So, Dr. Nate, that sounds hard. And I'm like, yes, it absolutely is. So this is hard. When we talk about fasting, when we talk about avoiding sugar, when we talk about working out, yes, all of that, it seems pretty hard to the average person. But here's the thing that I always say, life is hard. Life can be incredibly hard. So, but you can do the hard things now, and it becomes easier later, or you can choose the easy things now and it becomes very hard later. And what does it look like for a lot of men to be very hard later? It just means this: immobility, chronic fatigue, loss of limbs, blood sugar issues. It can be problems with sleep apnea. It can be a lot of different things. All of those things are very, very hard. That's why I say is life is going to be hard. You can have easy now, and it's going to be hard later. And I see a lot of people that choose easy now. They just choose medications, they choose inactivity, and it becomes very hard for them. Or you can start doing the hard things now, and later on, while people are going through hard times, it will be easy for you. Life is always going to be hard, But the reality is what you have to choose is that you have to choose your hard. You have to choose what kind of hard you want, because if you don't, it's going to choose it for you. So here's some of the things that I'm going to be doing, and I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just going to share with you what I'm doing. So here's what I'm doing. So for 28 days, for the next 28 days, it's going to be meats and veggies only. Okay. Now we would also call that a no sugar diet. It's not a no carbohydrate diet, but it's a very low carbohydrate, very high complex carbohydrate type diet. And basically all I'm going to be eating is meats and veggies. I'm also going to be doing a 3-day water fast in which I'm already 1 day down in it. Once I finish up that 3-day fast, I'm going to do time restricted eating, which is basically 18 hours of not eating anything and then 6 hours of feeding. And basically, I'll be eating like one meal a day. That's it. Just eating one meal a day of eating meats and veggies as much as I want. Um, I'm also going to be CrossFitting and lifting and doing conditioning. And this isn't anything different than I already don't do 4 times a week. This reminds me, I need to go in and do an in-body test in order to look at my body fat, but I will also do it afterwards and look at body fat analysis. So we use an in-body in order to look at body fat. And I think that most men can do very well if their body fat is 15 to 20% of body fat. But then also making sure no snacks, not even organic junk food, and no alcohol. So I'm not doing any of that. And in fact, people are like, well, what if it's organic chips? I'm like, well, I'll just stay organically fat if I do that. So no snacks, no organic junk food, no alcohol. And in fact, one of the things that I see when people say, oh, I can't lose weight, is that they're just snacking on junk food so much. And I've had multiple people tell me, I say, you look at what you are eating and what you are snacking on. You are snacking on junk food, and how much you're eating, how many carbs you're eating, your total caloric intake is way over what you perceive that you're actually doing. And that's why one of the reasons why you can't lose weight. No snacks, no organic junk food, and no alcohol. All of those things that I'm going to be doing for the next 28 days. Now, during my fast, am I going to be taking supplements? The answer is absolutely yes. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing during my fasting days, I've actually already done it, is I'll take 6 to 12 capsules of potassium. That will come out to about 2,400 milligrams of potassium. I'll also will be consuming magnesium citrate, and I'll actually have it right now in my water in order to keep my minerals up. During the 28 days, I'm going to be having desiccated liver, 2 capsules twice per day. That's nature's multivitamin. So that is nature's multivitamin right there. And then also I'll be having about 60, 70 grams of bone broth protein. So I'll be having about 60, 70 grams of bone broth protein. So I'm making sure that I'm going to be getting about 150 grams of protein per day. Because the reality is, guys, is that if you don't get enough protein, usually what you're replacing it with is just a bunch of processed carbohydrates that are just wreaking havoc long-term on your body. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next 28 days. Am I telling you to do it? No, not necessarily. Please don't ask me if you should or if you shouldn't, because everybody's different. Everybody is unique. But that's what I'm going to be doing, because I understand, I know my labs, and I know what I should be doing too. So here's a final thought, guys. Most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do planning their life. Isn't that sad? People will literally spend hours and weeks and months, planning their trip to Disney. And they'll spend more time, planning their trip to Disney than they will just planning their life. And I've always wondered that. I'm like, why is that? And this is actually my quote. I think this comes from Jim Rohn. And he said, perhaps because it's easier to escape than it is to change. Ooh. And that is so true. We love to escape rather than to look in a mirror and say, here's what I need to change about my life. And that's exactly why, guys, coming up Tuesday, August 12th at 6:00 p.m., that's our in-person inflammation event. Guys, if you suffer with this, please make sure, and you're from the Chicagoland area, please get registered for this inflammation event so that you can work with me directly and we can start helping you cut and clear a clear path towards becoming your best version of yourself. I believe that's possible if you're willing to, number one, schedule and get to that inflammation event. And then number two, start changing some things that you know you need to in your life. So get registered for that right now. Ladies, this is also open to you as well. All you have to do is go to our Linktree profile and all our socials. You'll see the link. Click on that. The first thing to show up will be the inflammation event. Click on that. That'll take you to Eventbrite, take you 60 seconds to register. It's free to attend that event. Here's one other final thought too. Start planning your life based on your priorities. Okay. Do you even know what your priorities are? What's important and what shouldn't be important in your life? Start planning your life based on your priorities, or someone else will plan your life for you. And they won't have your best interests in mind. I can guarantee it. Start planning your life based on your priorities. What are your priorities? And if you don't do that, someone's going to start planning your life for you, and they're not going to have your best interests in mind. So start planning your life based on your priorities. Guys, this is the Man Up event. If you enjoyed this, please make sure that you give me a thumbs up. Please make sure that you share this with other people. And in fact, tag someone who you know that needs to hear this. So I'll be going live next week as well. Don't have a topic yet. But if you enjoyed this, please make sure that you share this video with other people. Share it on YouTube and on Facebook. Share it on Rumble. Let other people know that there's a better way. And in fact, once you know a better way, then you can start to make better choices. So guys, thank you so much for watching this. And also, I hope you guys have a great week coming up. I hope you guys, if you're from Chicago, please stay dry. And I hope you guys have an awesome week ahead. And here's wishing you good health, wishing you vitality, wishing you just of clear mind. And also make sure that you always remember who you are and take a stand for something, or else you'll fall for really anything. So be well, guys. Be blessed.